Nice night tonight. It's 200th episode. Got a live audience with us. We got a band in the studio. We're really putting it all out today. So tonight we're going to look at the past 15 months, what we've done. Who's hot, who's not, what people were watching. It's been great. I mean, I started this back in May last year. During the pandemic, we were all locked down. I thought, wouldn't it be great to go through my record collection and just see what I have? And maybe share that with the YouTube audience, with the goal of maybe introducing people to some new artists they didn't know, maybe reminding them of some of those great artists we've had in the past and they've got records kicking around the house that they haven't listened to in a while and thought, gee, wouldn't it be great to pull those out? So the goal of the program was to kind of just talk about music, remind you of what you could be listening to, because a lot of times we found during the pandemic that music was kind of a saving grace for people. We had a lot of bands, Mary Chapin Carpenter, John Fogerty, some from Blue Rodeo, that were doing live concerts just to help people get through and cope with the stress. So we're providing an opportunity here to say, here's some different things you could listen to, while you're at home or while you're out driving around. And a lot of them, I mean, they're classic hits. There's some stuff that's pretty obscure, and you'll find out as we go through our list. I was shocked with some of the ones that did as well as they did. I thought nobody's going to know who these people are. And over the year, we've had really good support. Now, I'd like to thank everybody that has watched our videos, everybody that shares them, passes them along. If you give them a like, really appreciate that. It's nice to get some YouTube stats in there as well. And if there's anything you like in particular and maybe you want me to see if I have more of, don't be afraid to put a comment in. Over the 200 episodes, we really haven't repeated many artists. I don't even know if we repeated any other than a mention of some, because there's a lot of connections between some of these players. In the next few episodes, we may go back and revisit a few others. Some musicians had a very colored career, different styles, different labels they played for, how the music changed. We may go back and revisit some of those. But at this point, in the first 200, it's all been brand new. Now, I have gone through, if you watch the program, I've created playlists, because Mondays we do jazz, big band, Wednesdays are classic rock, Friday can be a mix of anything. We've classical, we've got comedy, we've had spoken word, we've had folk, we've had country, a lot of things in there. So I've created playlists so that if you like a particular type of music, you don't have to sort through all 200 episodes. You can go to the playlist and find the style you like and maybe check out some of those videos. Anyways, let's get on with the show today. 200 episodes. What did people like? And this is a long haul. I mean, this is 15 months. Not a lot of hits maybe in the first few weeks, but some of them have been around quite a while, and some of them are still generating views. I mean, I realize I'm a small YouTube channel, and really in its infancy. 15 months is not very long to have a YouTube channel going, so the hits may be not as big. And because I'm featuring a lot of well-known artists, my videos may not be very high on the playlist. They may be quite a ways down, which also may explain why some of the more obscure ones are doing a little better. But let's find out who we've got. Here's our top 10 for the first 200 episodes. Album number 10, Jerry Lee Lewis, The Killer. It was an album that he did with a lot of guest performers that came in and joined him for a song. I mean, great album here. I think Jimmy Page on there. We've got John Fogerty on. A lot of great recording artists that contributed to this to create a very special, not a lot of new music, but a lot of new performances. And that seemed to resonate very well with the watchers and the listeners. Another one, number 9, was U.S.A. for Africa. If you remember, Bob Geldof put together the U.S.A. for Africa campaign. We had a two-disc concert that was on video, and they recorded a song by Michael Jackson. Quincy Jones produced it, and pretty much anybody anybody was on that, singing a line or two. I mean, we had Willie Nelson, we had Kenny Rogers, we had Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, Hall & Oates were on there, Ray Charles, just name after name. And that was the one song they had. This album included that. They included the song by Northern Lights, which was the Canadian version with Canadian artists, as well as a couple of tunes from the different artists that performed. And this one is kind of forgotten about. It was a big hit at the time. I remember that's when music videos were very popular, and every week it was top of the video charts, just because there were so many great people in it, and it was such a great performance and a great tune. Now, as we move on up, we got number 8, and it's the boss, Bruce Springsteen. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. Couple of albums that I really liked. You can see here, Darkness on the Edge of Town. That was one of my favorites. There's 4 Springsteen tunes on that if that's all you had, for me, that would be enough. I mean, we have Badlands, Racing in the Street, Darkness on the Edge of Town. They were just classics. And like I say, for me, that album contains some of what I consider some of the best of what Springsteen had done. And there's still, I mean, a lot of great albums out there. And I think people really got into this for being a popular artist, and again, me being very low on the playlist. We had quite a few views and quite a few hits on this one. Okay, number 7 on the list was the Beatles. This was our second episode we did. Covered the Beatles, and I covered some of the albums that I particularly liked. We looked at Meet the Beatles, of course, one of my favorites, the White Album, Let It Be, and a little later on we did an episode of Let It Be where we looked at what was called Naked, or Let It Be Naked, where they'd taken all the orchestras out, all the stuff Phil Spector had done, and just released pretty much the band on its own. The way McCartney thought it should sound, not so much the way Lennon liked it. But it was a great album. It's Let It Be Naked, and there was another disc that came with it too, one called Fly on the Wall, that's worth checking out. But if you liked that album, here's a chance to hear it stripped down to the bare minimum what 4 guys sitting around a room could be playing. Okay, after that, I've got one of my surprise ones. Number 6 on the list was John Zorn, a jazz album called Spillane. Now, firstly, I didn't know a lot of people would even know who John Zorn was. John's got a very unique style of performing and writing. Basically, this album was done with cue cards, where he'd give cue cards to the players and say, okay, spooky music here, or interesting music here, or chase music there. And it was up to them to develop the song that went in with the arrangement. And of course, you can tell a lot of it was tied into the novels of Mickey Spillane, who again was one of my favorite writers. And the album just really, I really loved it. We had Albert Collins on there doing some other work as well. But it surprised me because, again, I didn't think a lot of people would know who John Zorn was. And here we are, the number 6 viewed video we had in the last 15 months. So that was pretty amazing. Up above that, we go back into some old jazz. Surprisingly, a lot of the albums were jazz related, it seems. So my number 5 album was Maynard Ferguson, or number 5 show. Maynard, we covered his material, one of his early albums, Screamin' Blues, and some of the ones I liked on Columbia, up until Chameleon. Chameleon Live at Jimmy's and MF Horns. And this represented a lot of what I'd heard when I went to Maynard concerts. This was the touring bands I'd seen. This was the music they were playing live in all the venues I went to. Things changed a bit once we hit Bob James as a producer with the next album on, Primal Scream. But we didn't cover those at this point. We may come back to that. I mean, Maynard had a whole nother era there. But we covered the Columbia era up till Chameleon. Some excellent albums there if you get a chance to hear them. And again, pretty much a representation of what you'd hear live. And if you follow the show, you know I really love the live albums because that's where I really get the truthfulness of the band. I mean, you get in the studio, well, that's great, but producers take control of a lot of it and what they think sounds right. And when you go to the show, that's not what you're hearing most of the time. You're hearing the live band putting it out there and a lot more truthfulness than that. So live performances, if I can get them, that's really one of the things I look for. Okay, up above that, number 9, another jazz-oriented one. Sorry, I'm number 4. I'm so far down the list. We're at number 4 right now. Another jazz-oriented one was Chuck Mangione. Now, Chuck's had a long career, a lot of recordings. We focused on mainly the Mercury years. Some of his early work, Friends in Love Concert, Together, Alive, Land of Make-Believe. And this was a time when Chuck was doing a lot of work with large orchestras, which at that time I was lucky enough to go and see a couple of concerts where he actually incorporated the orchestras in the shows. You don't see that much anymore. When he was into the next stage, which I hope to talk about probably in the next couple of weeks, we're going to look at the A&M albums that Chuck did. Went to concerts there, but they were more quartet concerts. You didn't get the full orchestra, the full gala performances that we were seeing in those early years, in the Mercury years. And when he was touring, he was hiring local orchestras to play with him. I'd seen in Toronto, he brought an orchestra in, the Land of Make Believe. He had the Hamilton Philharmonic. He was doing big shows then. By the time he went to the A&M, which would be his most popular years, he was just down doing quartet concerts mainly, or quintet, because they added another player in there. Anyways, we'll talk about them in a couple of weeks. But the Mercury years are what we focused on, and that was our number 4 viewed video. Number 3, Bob James. Now, you heard me mention him a few minutes ago as a producer, and I got mixed feelings as his producing albums, but he put out a couple of albums under his own name that were just excellent. And some of the ones that we focused on were the CTI albums, Creed Taylor. He put out some great albums in the 70s, some great performances by these guys, as well as an album called Round the Town that Bob James did. And probably what Bob James would be most familiar to viewers for was he wrote the theme for the TV show Taxi. That's really probably the most recognizable song he had done. But some great stuff. I mean, he's a good arranger. He wrote some nice tunes. I had some issues with the producing, but maybe that's just me. But it was our number 3 viewed video. And I was surprised because, again, I didn't know how many people would pick up on who Bob James was. Okay, number 2. I listed it as episode 1, video or music of historic importance. It was the Woodstock soundtrack. Yes, back late 60s, the music from the film Woodstock. That featured the greats. I mean, we had Joe Cocker, we had The Who, we had Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Arlo Guthrie, John Sebastian, 10 Years After, Sly and the Family Stone, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, who wasn't playing this? And those are only the ones that made that album. During the show, we looked at subsequent releases they've had that featured other performers that didn't make the cut for the movie, as well as some of the solo albums they produced. Right now, there's albums available or music available online if you're streaming, where they'll have Melanie, Janice Joplin, their entire set for the Woodstock event. So you can actually go through and listen to what those performers, what they did for the concert. Now we get down to our number one viewed video in the last 15 months, Diodato. Again, here I thought, who's going to know who Diodato is? I mean, I liked his music in the 70s. He had the big hit with the theme from 2001 Space Odyssey. But other than that, excuse me, he did arranging, he wrote piano, or played piano with a group. He had great bands. The albums I had were, again, the Creed Taylor ones, where Creed was bringing in some of the best studio musicians from New York to play along. And they were just amazing albums. But again, I thought, who's going to know? I had people on there saying from Brazil how much they loved him, a Brazilian player, to see that we're featuring it. And that's another thing I found when I'm looking at my playlist and who's viewing. I only have about 50%, sometimes less, of Canadian viewers. The rest are somewhere else in the world, so I'm not even sure where they're all coming from because I can't pull that stat up. But maybe a lot of these views, I really don't realize how far-reaching they are. But Diodato being the number 1 performing video out of the whole set. And again, there may be a lot of you who have never listened to his music. Go online, stream it, check it out. I mean, it was great stuff. In the 70s, if you watched the show last Monday, that was an exciting time for jazz. Things were changing. Jazz was not what it was. We were incorporating a lot of different sounds. We had a lot of rock sounds in there. We had electronic instruments. We had a whole different context for the music, and it was not that old jazz of the 60s or the 50s. And there was some exciting stuff happening, and Creed Taylor was one of the ones that was getting that on vinyl. So that's it, our number 1 album, Diodato. Now, I had a couple things that surprised me. First one is maybe not a big surprise, but 2 different things. Tied for views was Stevie Ray Vaughan, I mean, the king of guitar, and just a great blues man, and folk singer Gordon Lightfoot. Both of them did really well. Probably more people are familiar with Stevie Ray, not so much with Gordon Lightfoot, but I mean, there they were tied up, and that kind of surprised me. But the biggest surprise, I had Janice Joplin. I mean, just classic rock star. You can't even touch her. She's the queen, with Woodstock and all the performances she had done before she passed away, nobody's going to say that she wasn't a #1 performer. Who did she tie with? Nash the Slash. Man, he's one of my favorites, but I thought, who's going to know Nash? He was a little independent performer, worked out of Toronto, didn't have major representation or agent. He did all his work on his own. He created his own record label to put albums out. Basically, it was the king of the independents. He ran the whole thing himself, made a career out of it, and did pretty well. He opened for a lot of major bands. If you watch his video, you'll see we talked about some of the groups he had performed with, and he became an international star. Starting out, again, just running everything by himself, nobody promoting him or, managing him at the time. And the fact that he tied with Janice Joplin, I just couldn't imagine it. I mean, two opposite ends of the scale from, the type of performers, the type of music, because Nash's music was a little different at first. Very electronic. He played violin, electronic instruments behind him. He was really one of the early pioneers of recorded music and him just performing in front of it without a band. He later went on and did a little more vocals and things like that with his music, but I mean, that was something that happened later, and maybe that was part of the thing that really grew his audience. But again, if you get a chance, check out Nash the Slash on there. I mean, amazing that he would have matched up. Okay, that's it. We're just having a short video to look at, what's happened over the last year. If any of those in the top 10 are interesting to you, take a look at the video and see what we've got. I mean, obviously, these were the ones that appealed to the most viewers, and it's very diverse. I mean, from old-time rock with Jerry Lee to U.S.A. for Africa, Springsteen, Beatles, John Zorn, right out there from everybody else. We got jazz with Maynard Ferguson, Chuck Manzoni, Bob James, Woodstock, and Diodato, our #1 performer. So I just, again, want to thank everybody that's been watching the show, everybody that's supported it along. Hope you stay with us, and hopefully we'll get together real soon. Also want to have a little shout out for my technical assistants, my crew here that make sure we get everything looking good and the video works well. I've got an editor here that puts it together for me. I've got a person that looks after some of my wardrobe. I've got family here tonight. My daughter and wife are here in the audience as well, kind of coming along. And they like to come to a lot of the shows just to see what we do here. And they help me out with some of the things I forget sometimes, or some of the information I need to know. Because really the show, we go no script. I mean, as you can see, we're not doing retakes. It's no script, straight up talk, no retakes. What you're getting is what's happening right now, and we're not going to take any of that back. It is what it is, and I hope you enjoy that. Anyways, thanks again for coming. Everybody have a great night, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.